All right, and we're live. Hooray!
Oh no.
Oh, I didn't tell you we were going to be alive. Or were you
No.
expecting to be dead tonight?
I was expecting somebody to count me in. It's fine.
Oh yeah, no problem. Sorry, I usually just push the button and then we're live. Aha! So,
It's fine.
welcome, internets, to the live stream Drink to the Past. This is the 5 second opening that is exclusive to you. The audio listeners will not hear this because I always like to make sure that I'm actually live before I start recording the podcast. So now I'm going to actually start recording the podcast for the audio listeners. This was your 10 seconds of audio enjoyment exclusive here on YouTube. Catch us live on Friday nights or something. Hello, Internet. My name is Spamoman, as always, your host of Drink to the Past, the only podcast where I've got beer. Actually, that's all of the podcasts that I am on, which is usually just this one, but occasionally the other one that I haven't got around to in a while, and I blame Crow. So it's all his fault. Also, share and subscribe and ring that bell to get a notification every Friday when we go live on YouTube. I am joined by co-host and/or guests. That's what it says in my ubiquitous opening monologue notes. But you may notice that my co-host is not actually here today. But I do have and/or guests. So this is our good friend T Crusading. Is that what you go by? Do I just call you that or?
Yeah, or Jack.
Oh,
Jack
Jack.
is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, whenever I have somebody on the podcast, I always forget to ask them, like, do you go by your handle or, like, your real name or something else? So yeah, glad to have Jack here. This is going to be a ton of fun. So I'm going to get streaming Ye Old Game here, and hopefully I can pay attention to what I'm doing while I'm drinking and gaming and all that. Why is it going all over the place? You shouldn't be drifting. I'm using my Pro Controller. No! No, it's drifting! Shit! This is going to be awkward. We're in for a fun-ass night.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I am going to go to Versus Race. So if you did not see, we're doing a special Pride Day stream, or Pride Month stream. It's the first podcast of Pride Month, so I don't know if I'll do this again later in the month as well, but I'm just going to be doing all Rainbow Road for Pride, so hooray. I also have my Sean Drinks Something Stupid for the week. If you're not familiar with the podcast, Sean Drinks Something Stupid is the part of the podcast where I drink something stupid, and I feel like I've been saying this a lot lately, but this is the stupidest cocktail I have made in a long time. So I was trying to think of something like Pride adjacent to make. So I was thinking about like what kind of cocktails I could make, and I was like just looking through my fridge, see what kind of stuff I've got, and so I ended up deciding to just go one thing for every color of the rainbow, which was a terrible idea. Because it would have been a good idea if I had a thing for every color of the rainbow that actually fit together, but I did not. So for red, I have V8 juice. For orange, I have some sort of peach cocktail mixer that I've had since 2 Christmases ago, sitting on top of my fridge, because you're supposed to, like, mix it with champagne, and I don't drink champagne. I'm a weird beer guy. So I was like, when the hell else am I going to use this? Fine, I'm going to dump it in. Okay, for yellow, of course, I had good old whiskey, because, it's a cocktail. It's got to have booze in it, so we got some whiskey in there. Green is apple juice. Blue... What did I put in for blue? Oh, yeah, I melted an Otter Pop in the microwave and dumped the blue Otter Pop in. And for purple, I got some grape jelly and just stirred it right in there. So this is going to be absolutely terrible, I'm certain. From V8 juice to grape jelly. You didn't see that coming, I'm certain. So
my
it
my
smells...
experience
Yeah, on the nose
with
here, it's
making
got a...
cocktails.
What was
is
that?
My experience with making cocktails is that if you put whiskey in them, they will taste terrible. Whiskey does not mix in cocktails very well.
Yeah, I don't know. I like
It goes
occasionally
with
am okay with it.
mixers.
I like just whiskey myself. I don't like
Oh yeah.
and every time I'm like looking at a recipe for a cocktail, it calls for whiskey, I'm like, okay, I could make that, but then I look at my whiskey shelf and all I have is whiskeys that I like to drink, and I'm like, I'd much rather actually just drink the whiskey than put it in
Yeah.
the cocktail. But
I think it goes well with mixers, but I don't think it goes well with much other alcohol. which you usually want in a cocktail.
This is not as terrible as I thought it would be.
I mean, I don't know. I thought it sounded all right, but I'm just a bit of a fiend for jelly, so...
Right? I mean, nothing wrong with jelly. The jelly actually kind of works on the back there. Yeah, there's a lot more... most of the forward taste is apple juice. And then you get a little bit of the spice from the V8 stuff. Most of the tomato is covered up by the other stuff, so it actually ends up just being like a lightly spiced sweet thing. So actually, like not 10 out of 10, but 10 out of 17. This is not the worst cocktail I've had on the podcast. You can look through our backlog. I've had some weird shit. So.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Anyways. Also, since unfortunately it is some crazy ungodly hour in British Standard Time, our good buddy is unable to drink, so I got my little Triforce shot here, so I'll drink for you. That's a rule on the podcast. If our guest can't drink, then I have to drink for you. It's more fun that way. So I have a little shot here of, what is that? Coconut rum. Malibu.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, not too bad. Nice, easy drinking thing. All right. So, anyways, how am I gonna get in here? So, what should I do? Like hard comm? I'm gonna like screw up and die anyway. All right, go 48 races because it's gonna be that long until I actually win. I haven't played on 150cc, let alone mirror mode, in a long time. Because most of the time anymore, when I play this game, I'm playing with my kids, which. They don't play on the hard modes, so it's been a hot minute. I tone it down to 50cc or 100cc for them, and they do all right. They're getting there, but they're still youngins, so gotta ease them in.
Is this the one that has 200cc in it?
This is the one that has 200cc. So if I do really good on the mirror mode and I need to crank up the difficulty in order to start drinking more, then I'm gonna pop it up to 200 because I know I suck at 200cc. Even when I was when this game first came out back in 2017, I got really really good at it, and I was playing online and getting really good placings all the time in online and 150cc and all that. But then when I pop it up to 200cc, you have to brake, so that's not a terrible thing in and of itself, but it really changes the core mechanics of the game, because the core mechanics of the game is drifting, and drifting doesn't work on 200cc, so you gotta kind of
you really have to just completely change.
You have to relearn the game, and I was just like, no, I've sunk enough time into this game, I'm not gonna learn how to play it again, right? So that's kind of what I thought about that. All right, well, I'm not doing too bad here. So anyways, let's go into our gaming news. We call this section the Nooz'n'Booz because we talk about news and booze. So I've already talked about my booze. I got hit by a thwomp. Pretty sure that means I have to drink eventually, but all right. First piece of gaming news, see if I can look at my other monitor while I'm trying to play Mario Kart, is, if I can see it, Nintendo announced their E3 presentation will be an E3 Nintendo Direct. No big surprise there. That's what they all did before there was a pandemic. And now, that's basically all anybody can do. So that's going to air June 15th, which is the third day of E3. It's starting on June 12th. And said 45 minutes of news footage from the Nintendo Direct, followed up by about 3 hours of Treehouse gameplay. So that's more or less in line with what they've always done. A little less Treehouse gameplay, but because obviously they don't have to run an actual literal show floor for people at the show, so it kind of makes sense that they're not having 3 days of that. So any specific thoughts on what Nintendo's E3 plans are?
Not so much on the plans. I mean, pretty much to be expected. Should be pretty good. I look forward to seeing what it is, but I'm reserving most of my judgment or hopes for what it could be, because I don't like being disappointed.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of that. Especially with all the rumors that are floating around now. I feel like most years rumors around E3 time are just insane. And specifically this year, I feel like it's really bad because like we've been having like hotter and hotter like Switch Pro rumors specifically since like January this year. I feel like they've been around even before that, but they really started ramping up in January. I feel like. At least in my circles. And then, like, now they're just, like, literally every, like, multiple times a day, I see somebody or another post another Switch Pro leak, rumor, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've got a lot of stuff I hope they'll say, or I'll hope that they'll release.
Right.
Like, I'd love more news about Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah. Definitely.
Hype as hell for that. And it would be... I mean, what I've really been waiting for is a new Switch release with a special edition Switch. Because I've always wanted a special edition Nintendo console, and I've never got one.
Right. I always have one before they, like, I have the regular version, and then they announce the special edition, and I'm like, I got it on launch day, and now I don't want to spend an extra, several $100s on it. The only one I did actually end up getting was, I got a special edition, I got the Hyrule edition, new Nintendo 3DS XL, which is pretty sweet.
Nice.
Because I got that one as an upgrade to my base 3DS, because I was like, well, the upgrade is good enough that I think with the trade-in, it was kind of worth doing. So I was like, I could justify that. But most of the time, it's like the Wind Waker Wii U came out, right? And I was like, oh, look, it's a Wii U, exactly like the one I have, but it's cool in Wind Waker edition. But do I want to spend, another 300... what was it, $350, something like that, on the same console I already have. And I was just like, no, I don't think I do. Like, it would be awesome, but, I'm just not going to spend that much unless it's like a legit upgrade.
Yeah, no, I'm very much the same. It's the reason why I've never got one before. But I kind of want to for the Switch.
Yeah.
And honestly, if they do, like, if the Switch Pro ends up being a thing that's happening soon, and they are releasing special editions for it, then I'll probably just upgrade to that at some point.
Yeah, I would kind of be the same. Like, as is, I'm like, a Switch Pro right now, I probably wouldn't bother upgrading, but if they say, hey, look, it's got a cool, snappy Zelda design, then, I'm going to fork over $400 right the fuck then. So, I'm not doing too bad, actually. I got first place in that first race, and I've mostly held a solid lead this race. So maybe I will have to jump it up. I'm remembering my sea legs better than I expected. So
The muscle memory's kicking in.
Yeah, something like that.
The old skills.
Yeah. I got mad skills. All right, first place 2 in a row. That means I have to take a celebratory drink. I like showing off my glassware sometimes. This one's kind of plain, but it's just a, nice Colorado Rockies collector glass I got at the stadium when I was at ye old baseball game.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that's been pretty sweet. Next piece of news and booze, Yuji Naka has updated his Facebook and LinkedIn accounts, and they show he is no longer working for Square Enix. So this is kind of an interesting development, and like... when I read this, I was like, immediately my mind went to, okay, hold on. He has been fired because Balan Wonderworld was that crappy, right? And I have no idea if that's the truth. It's probably not. It might be related. I have no idea. But, like, it feels like cause and effect, doesn't it? It's like Balan Wonderworld is epic turd of the century, and now Yuji Naka doesn't work at Square anymore. Like, I feel like I have to put 2 and 2 together on this, even though it's probably not how it's going, but I'm going to start spreading rumors of that's how it's going anyway. What do you think about that? You a Yuji Naka fan?
I mean, the original Sonic games were really good.
Right, yeah. That's one of the things that it's like, I never got into anything other than Sonic, but, like, I mean, Sonic was great. Like,
yeah.
especially when he
Sonic
was
was
like primarily developing it. Okay, this is the hard Rainbow Road. This is where I'm gonna suck it up. But yeah, it's like it's hard to like judge such a storied game developer, but when something comes out with as like that pisses off fans as much as Balan Wonderworld did, it's like it's hard not to kind of get a little judgy, and maybe that's just us being stupid entitled gamers or whatever. But it is what
no,
it is.
I think it's worth calling out. The games industry could do a lot more to call out games that aren't good.
Yeah.
I think mediocrity is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I think like game journalism could do a lot more to kind of like challenge mediocrity, especially in like design terms. But I think also there's a lot of industry illiteracy in gamers where they don't really understand how games are made.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of it's very easy when you've got a big name attached to a project, kind of like just go. Obviously, they were the person who was responsible for how this all went bad. It's like, I mean,
on a project as large scale as Balan Wonderworld, theoretically, Yuji Naka's not the only guy working on it, right? So
no, and I guess like to an extent, it's a thing of if he's got like top billing, he is culpable.
Yeah, I mean, he is the director of the game, so
so
to an extent, he is the guy that you have to go to be like, okay, this released like this, and you were in charge, so you let it release like this.
Yeah, completely agree with that, but I think that there's a level of maybe he's just not a very good director.
Yeah, maybe, because, I mean, obviously the programming is what he primarily did in the Sonic days, so obviously he proved his skill at that, so should we really judge him necessarily for one kind of blunder? And a lot of people I think he directed the Nights into Dreams game too, and those have like he was heavily associated with them somehow. I don't remember exactly all the details. If Chris was here, if my co-host, he's a big Nights into Dreams fan, he could tell us all about it. But
cool. I never played any of them. I don't think they released in Europe, or they weren't easily available in Europe. And the original Nights was Sega Saturn.
Yeah.
It's a console I never had, so.
Yeah, the only time I played it was with Chris, I think on Dreamcast. Because it was, back in college, it was one of his favorite games to go to, and, like, I was over one time, and he was like, yeah, check it out, it's awesome, and I was like, this is a game. I was not into it, but it's got a big cult following, and a lot of people really love it, and it sounds like the people who really, were into that were expecting something akin to that, and they didn't deliver, like, at all. Okay, so I got second in that race, so I have to try again until I get first. I have to take a punishment drink now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how
until I get first, yeah. And if I get first in this one, then I can go to 200cc, and I'm gonna totally just suck it up. It's gonna be epic fails all around.
Like I think just we don't. I think sometimes we fail to celebrate the skills that certain developers have. We get a bit caught up on just kind of like we miss what they were actually doing on certain projects sometimes.
Yeah.
Like Hideo Kojima is very good at a lot of things.
Yeah.
And script writing is like a double-edged sword with that man.
Right, yeah. It's like, I don't know, for me it's kind of like one of those what's that guy's I'm trying to think of the Kill Bill guy.
Oh,
you know the guy.
Tarantino.
Hateful Eight. Yeah, Tarantino. Where it's like, it's not necessarily something for you to understand. Right? It's the most high quality, highly polished what the fuck in the world. I love Tarantino movies, but I could not tell you why. Like, if you told me to describe, like, the recent one was with Matt Damon in Hollywood, like, I love that movie, but like I could not tell you why. It like the plot is like hard to follow. The characters are strange, and like it's just I don't know why I like it. It's just finely tuned what the fuck. It's literally the best description I could come up with. And Kojima is the same, because I really don't understand entirely the plot of Death Stranding, but that was my game of the year for 2019. Like by a long shot, because first of all, it was just one of the most interesting games to play that I've ever beheld, and other than that, like it's just that kind of Kojima-ness that it's like it's finely tuned, even though I don't know 100% what it's supposed to be.
That's legit. Yeah, I haven't had the chance to play Death Stranding. I can't remember what came out in 2019. Dates confuse me.
Right, yeah. I had to think a second to think of what year it was. I was like, pretty sure that was 2019. Might have been 2018, but I'm fairly certain it was 2019. But you know what? 2020 went by so oddly that I really could not tell you. It might have been a long time ago. I don't know.
Time has lost all meaning.
Yeah.
At this point.
Right. All right. Next piece of Nooz'n'Booz is a little bit of an awkward one. So, Injustice 2, the mobile version, is celebrating Pride Month in probably the most awkward way they ever could. They have introduced, I don't entirely understand how it works, but basically they've got some kind of in-game event where players worldwide are trying to see how many times they can defeat Poison Ivy, who is probably, next to Harley Quinn, like the most, predominantly known LGBT, like, character in the Marvel Universe. DC Universe, yeah, right. Hey, I got first! Holy shit, how did I do that? I thought I was, like, way behind.
Wow.
Okay.
Nicely done.
Apparently I pulled ahead at the end there. All right, so, yeah. All right, that means I have to go to 200cc, so are we ready to drink? I mean, I am. I'll drink for you.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm a pal like that, so if you're drinking along at home, it's your turn to drink. Got my drink sign. All right. Yeah, all right, so let's get back into this. Yeah, so the problem here, like, I feel like this was a well-meaning thing that somebody did not think through, and none of their superiors questioned it because they were just like, I don't know, like, fucking rich and didn't give a shit because they're the people that, are up the, top execs at Warner Brothers that are just like, what? Yeah, you can do stuff with the video game as long as it generates a fuckload of money. We don't care, because celebrating Pride Month by making a boss fight where you beat the shit out of an LGBT person repeatedly, like, literally, it's counting the worldwide times she's defeated, and they're like every 200,000 times or something you get like a new tier that unlocks in-game rewards. It's like,
oh jeez, it's so much worse than I thought it was.
Yeah,
I thought they just didn't tweet about it. I didn't realize that it was actually a game.
Yeah, it's literally a thing in the game where like you can unlock more rewards if the collective playing community beats the crap out of Poison Ivy more. It's like I want to be like, okay, they were trying something unique, but it's just hard to do that when they're just, it's encouraging you to beat the crap out of a person of the community. That's like, I don't even 100% know what to say about that.
I mean, for one, oh wow, just nobody thought that through for even a second, because wow, just yikes. But to be fair to them, they have released a comment, which is one of the better corporate apologies I've ever seen, I think.
Okay.
Where they did acknowledge the level of violence and abuse that is often directed at people of the LGBTQ plus community, and that they were incredibly insensitive to do it, and that it was a bad thing. So, to be fair to them, they have acknowledged the failing, and they have even taken it upon themselves to give some information out, like that people could do with hearing.
Right.
So I will give them credit for that. I will not give them credit for how ridiculously tone deaf and stupid the initial thing was, because that should not have happened.
Right.
That's not okay at all. And yeah, I don't know the background of it. The impression I got, and I'm more than happy. Well, I think that this is the kind of reading, and if it isn't the truth, then I apologize if anybody takes this like as verbatim, because I don't actually know. But this is just the impression I got, was that it's more that it's a rolling event where they have a different character be the boss character that everybody's beating to rack up scores. Like it rolls over, it's the kind of thing that fighting games would do.
Right, yeah.
I think that's the case, and it just so happened that somebody thought it would be really clever to have famous lesbian Poison Ivy be the one for Pride Month, and didn't think it through.
Yeah, I guess. It seems like, though, you could have just as easily thought of, like, reversing this idea if this is, like, a normal thing. Because I don't play the game, but I will say I play Pokemon Go, and they do similar events like, hey, if trainers beat, like, the legendary Pokemon in raid battles, X number of times, then you'll unlock bonuses. So I kind of understand the idea behind this sort of event, and depending on the context, I feel like it could be done, just as well. But the way that they handled it just seems really, like you said, like, I think tone deaf is a perfectly good word for it. It's like you could have just as easily reversed that role and just like, hey, if players worldwide get this many victories playing as Poison Ivy,
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, then, like, that would have been awesome, like, power to the community and all that, instead of let's beat up the queer. What the fuck, guys? What the fuck, Warner Brothers?
Yeah, it's really not okay.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame that they missed the chance to do something, like do it the other way around and make something that could have actually been pretty cool. And instead made that garbage.
Yeah.
No.
Yep. So that's that, and our last piece of Nooz'n'Booz, so we get off of this awkward gravy train, is actually a pretty nice one. Very nice, in fact, because No More Heroes 1 and 2 are coming to Steam on June 9th, which, if you write that in American, this will be confusing for you, because you're across the pond. Hold on. I need to pause this while I'm explaining this. So, if you write the date, you would write it 9/6, but we in America are backwards because we're weirdos. So it's 6/9. Oh, yeah. So,
Nice.
Also, the No More Heroes games are awesome, and everybody should check them out. And I'm way behind now because I had to stop the game to explain 69. All right. I'm proud of myself.
Oh, no, that's really cool, though.
So they just obviously came to Switch not too long ago, back in September or something. So it kind of makes sense to have, ports of them heading to other places. The original was ported to PlayStation 3 at some point, so I think it's possible we'd see these on, hopefully PS5 and Xbox at some point. I think that'd be cool. But, obviously no conversion, or what was I trying to say? Confirmation. Conversion. Yeah. No confirmation yet on that front, but I think it's a possibility, and I would definitely like to see that. No More Heroes is just one of my favorite series. It's just such a wacky-ass game series. So coming to PC if you're interested in that. I didn't look up the price. It'll probably be the same as the Switch ports, are like $20 each or something, but they've gone on sale regularly for like 10 a piece, so... Not too expensive to get into the series, with No More Heroes 3 coming up later this year. Are you a No More Heroes fan?
I played the first one. I really enjoyed it, but I never actually finished it.
Right.
For a variety of reasons. Not because of the game, just because it's one of those ones that I just never got around to finishing.
Yeah.
And I never got the chance to pick up number 2, but I really wanted to. I'm quite excited for 3.
Yeah.
do intend to get that.
Yeah, No More Heroes 2, gameplay-wise, is very similar, but it sort of streamlined a lot of things, made lots of quality of life kind of improvements to just make the game a little more user-friendly. It's kind of regarded as the better one. I think they did things differently, so it's harder for me to say that it's like the better one, but like I will admit that it does a lot of things better. So it's like, aha, 11th place. I got better than last time. Yeah.
Improved.
Yeah. So eventually maybe I won't totally screw up. Who knows? Let's see if I can get all the way up to first place in 200cc. This is not looking good so far, but I'll keep drinking.
I do think the SNES Rainbow Road is the hardest one on 200cc.
Yeah, all these sharp-ass turns and no fences.
Yeah.
And
like the other one, at least have, like,
it works really great on 150 because you can drift around all these corners perfectly on 150. And that's one of the things where, like I was saying, you know, you really have to relearn the entire game to be good at 200cc. But with that is our last piece of news and booze, so we'll get into our table topic here. Table topic for today is all we're going to be doing. We're not going to have a gaming topic so that we're not running too long for our poor old tired friend over in the UK. So our table topic this week is actually just randomly you tweeted out one day, and I saw this tweet, and that's how we got connected, because I hadn't heard of you before, and then I saw this tweet, and it was like, hey, does anybody have a podcast where we can talk about tabletop RPG design and stuff? And I was like, well, that would be awesome. That's, like, not exactly what we talk about, but, you know, that's totally in our wheelhouse, because we talk about some aspect of tabletop gaming every week here. So I figured that would be a fun topic to bring up, because myself and the co-host, Chris, do a fair amount of homebrew content, as well as both of us have, you know, designed various systems. And
nice.
If we can plug your content for a second, you guys over at Cobblepath have a Zelda tabletop, which is pretty cool, from what I understand.
Technically not quite.
Right?
The Zelda tabletop is just a thing I'm doing on my own
Okay.
in my own time. Cobblepath has other games.
Okay, so that's from you as opposed to Cobblepath, but yeah.
Just Nintendo, please don't bankrupt my company. It's a fan project.
Right, yeah. I think you're within your rights there, as long as you don't make money off it or something.
Yeah.
Once you start making money, then they'll be like, hold on, mister, we need a cut of that shit.
Yeah, I wouldn't make money off of it anyway, because obviously it's not my intellectual property. So
right, yeah.
So I'm making a Zelda tabletop in my spare time, and Cobblepath has made main thing at the moment is our horror game Locus, and we've also got like some other ones in the works. Later this year, we'll be kickstarting our second major sort of release.
Awesome.
Which is Coffee and Chaos, which is it's a comedy game about running a cafe. It's kind of designed to use pre-existing characters and groups. Mm-hmm. Should hopefully be pretty good. But yeah, mostly here for the Zelda one today, I think, because obviously.
Yeah, I mean, on a podcast called A Drink to the Past, you know, we have some love for Zelda in our hearts. Just a little bit. Zelda's my personal favorite series, so I've never designed a full-on Zelda tabletop, but I've designed Zelda homebrew content for like Dungeons and Dragons mostly. Yeah. Back in the day, we used to do 3.5 was our primary version. Now my group kind of switches around a bunch. We do like one group does Pathfinder that I'm with, and one group is like, okay, we're doing 3.5. Now we're doing 5th edition. Now we're doing some weird indie thing that Chris bought. You know, all sorts of weird stuff. Unknown Armies and Hero System occasionally. We haven't done Hero System in a long time, I guess, but you know, we get around there. So yeah, it's an interesting ride, but I used to design like tons of homebrew content for 3.5, and I think that's a good starting point for anybody who's into the idea of creating their own like tabletop mechanically. A good place to start is creating, custom content for a tabletop that already exists. What do you think
Completely.
about that? Have you ever done a lot of like homebrew stuff before you started, or did you just jump right into
Yeah.
the deep end? Or
So the first stuff I made was I started on World of Darkness
okay,
on WOD systems, and I started on New World really. And New World has a core system that's basically just like the standard rules for humans, because most of the games are kind of like based around different kind of like horror monsters like werewolves and vampires and such. So you've got the core rules that are kind of for humans, and then all the other games kind of expand on that. And I basically just homebrewed a load of stuff for that. And then I had like friends who ran their own games, and I kind of got involved with helping them make systems and rules to make them work. So that was actually where I got my start, was homebrewing stuff as well. So yeah, I absolutely completely agree. Like it's a great place to start if you're interested in doing it. Even if all you're doing is like making like a couple of custom spells or some cool items or something.
yeah, that's kind of where I started a little bit with the Zelda stuff. I started like creating race templates for like Gorons and stuff out of Zelda. So I had like Gorons and Zora because I wanted to do like a Zelda campaign. And then I eventually ended up doing like a bunch of different stuff because I got a bunch of different thoughts in my heads. And people would talk to me about like, oh, I'd like to do Avatar The Last Airbender campaign. I'd like to do a Lord of the Rings campaign, different stuff like this where they have these ideas and these are ideas I have too, obviously. I made all this Zelda stuff. So I've gone on all these thought project tangents and like sometimes I just like conceptualize them, like what would it be like, and sometimes I go out of my way if I really have a wild hair. I'll just like even today I'll still write up every now and then. I guess it's been a few years since I did the last big project I did for this was somebody was talking to me about doing a Dragon Ball Z campaign, and I wrote up this whole series of rules for creating your own Dragon Ball attacks because every like Dragon Ball hero has like their own signature move, and so I had a set of rules that I made up for using your own signature move and a bunch of different classes that I wrote up. That were more or less based on characters from the show or archetypes from just anime in general. And it ended up being fairly well received by my group. So I was kind of proud of that, even though it was just this wacky, strange thing that I did. I'm trying to remember who tweeted this. But they said homebrew design is tabletop RPG design, and I couldn't agree more with that. So I think just if you're looking for a starting point, then definitely just start homebrewing something.
Yeah, find a system you like and make some content for it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there are some systems that are better for it than others, and there are some systems that are outright designed for it as well. Like I know that there's a bunch of people who I sort of like have connected to on Twitter who have made systems that they describe as hackable.
Yeah.
And like they built the system to be hackable, and that basically means that it's really easy to homebrew stuff.
Yeah.
And we semi did it with Locus. We didn't. So Locus isn't. I wouldn't describe Locus as hackable because it's not really designed for you to change the rules or augment the rules in a really significant way. You totally can, but like it's not designed with that intent. But it's a personal horror game, so everything in it is kind of built around like player content. So whenever you make it, you make your own location that it's set in, and then the players make their characters, and then the DM or the director, we call them the director in it, they make monsters based on the player characters. We've got like a guide on how to do that and stuff. So it's not really hackable, but it's very, you make your own stuff out of it innately. So
I kind of like that idea. one of the tabletops I've designed is actually the one that I've put the most work and time into. Is I call it Super Simple Super System, because it's basically made to alleviate the issue of, like, most superhero style tabletop games that I've ever played are either not customizable enough, or it takes way too long to make the custom character you want to make. So I wanted to have something in the middle ground where you could make characters in, like 30 minutes or less, even at like high levels, right? And still have, like, hopefully limitless customization, which, as far as I can tell, it's like it's still in playtesting. So I'm hoping to, like, have like errors pointed out through playtesting.
Cool.
Because that's and it kind of uses the similar idea on that, where basically you're not so much going through and being like getting what you get, like in D&D. You're a fighter, you get these skills, you get these abilities or whatever. When you're a mage, you get to pick from these spells. It's all very specific. In this, it's like you kind of come up with the concept of what you want to do, and then the rules basically give you a way to explain it mechanically. So you're essentially creating your own powers, no matter what you want the power to be. And so that kind of customization is something that I think is very enviable, whether it's from a mechanical standpoint or from what it sounds like in your other Locust game. That sounds like it's a storytelling kind of customization in there, which sounds which sounds really interesting, especially in a hardcore character-driven horror game. I think that sounds really fun.
We're pleased with it. We think it's good, and people don't seem to hate it, which is nice.
Yeah, that helps.
It's quite interesting you talk about. Are you familiar with Mutants and Masterminds?
Loosely. Chris and I have played it. He ran a couple of campaigns in that system, so I've played it, but I'm not like deeply familiar with it. I've played, probably less than 5 sessions. But for what it was, I do think it was a good system.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites, but it's very much because it meets my personal niche of what I like.
Yeah.
So my sort of design white whale for years when I first started out, kind of like trying to make RPG systems, because I really wanted to make a system where you could make and play any character you could imagine, but mechanically distinct. Because I found that basically everything that I played at that point, where you could play anything, basically ended up boiling every character's mechanics down to a sort of like nothing mush, where like every character just kind of felt the same because there wasn't enough kind of like crunch to the game to give them those unique weights. And that's cool, it's just not my thing. So for years I wanted to make a system that was like, that allowed you to mechanically make a character and it to be mechanically different and distinct from all other characters. And then I played Mutants and Masterminds and was like, yeah, I'm not going to do as good as this. Like this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted to make. I'm never going to beat this. So it freed me. It freed me from that ambition, which was lovely because it means I can go and do other things.
You're right.
But yeah, like Mutants and Masterminds very much falls in that space that you were talking about, where the characters take forever to make.
Yeah, that was our kind of one issue with it, especially since our group has like campaign ADD, like, because we have a lot of DMs that have a lot of ideas, so we float between campaigns. Like sometimes literally every week we'll be starting a new campaign or playing a campaign that at least one of the players has never played in before, so we'll need to inevitably make somebody a character every week, and we've actually lost players from our group because of that, because we just like can't get our shit together and like agree on one campaign or even a couple of campaigns to just play for a little while. So for that reason is actually one of the reasons why I looked into designing my own system. But at the same time, I am afraid that if my system has a drawback, it is that, certain things will be samey, because rules that I've created, they work to create literally any power that you can think of, but mechanically, a lot of powers are going to be similar in the system. So
Yeah.
that's something that I've kind of been trying to think of ways to alleviate, to make it a little bit different. And so I think I've got a good balance where it's
Cool.
not every power is exactly the same, or every damage power is exactly the same. For example, you can have damage powers that come from different places, so they'll use different abilities mechanically in your characters, stuff like that. So I've tried to break it up a little bit, but I am afraid that it would slip into that opposite direction where it's like things just feel too samey, even though technically they're different. It's but I'm not 100% sure if that's more like a legitimate worry or just me being overcritically of myself. But
Yeah.
I think that's something that kind of comes with creating good tabletops, because a lot of good tabletop designers that I've talked to are very harsh on themselves too. So it's like, but then I
Most creators
think, oh, am I being too harsh on myself? Oh, no, it's not. It's okay. That's a good thing. And then I'm like, oh, am I just, taking this for granted? And am I not taking this seriously enough? And then I just have all sorts of mental battles with myself. So I think if you're having a mental battle with yourself, you're doing something right.
Yeah, like if you're questioning
Yeah.
things, then it means you care
Yeah.
about the things, and that's important.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like that sounds pretty cool. I've got, yeah, like, oh, I mean, so here is a Hyrule was very much kind of in that bent as well. Like a lot of it was I wanted to make a Zelda system just because it's sort of been in the back of my mind for a few years, and I just sort of had a weekend where I just kind of like thought through some ideas for it, and I was like, actually, that's kind of cool. Why don't I just do it?
Yeah.
And I just sort of started like writing it up on notes and stuff. And yeah, like the big ambitions were I wanted the different tribes to feel really different. Because I don't think if you're playing a Zora, you should feel like you're playing the same character you're playing a Goron,
Yeah.
because they're presented very differently in the games. And I also wanted to kind of like have a sort of skill system where I'm a big fan of player-based kind of like progression, where you get to pick what you progress in. I'm not a huge fan of like prescriptive level systems and classes.
Right.
It's a taste thing. I prefer having I prefer it when players get to kind of like craft their character
Yeah.
rather than the game kind of telling them what they get because they made one choice at character gen.
Yeah.
So sort of built the whole system around that, with the whole thing of like, well, in the Zelda games you do a lot of different stuff, and they're primarily combat focused. So it is basically a combat tunnel game because seems like that seems appropriate for the game that it's trying to emulate. So it's like it's very much a sort of like D&D adventure-esque combat tunnel type game, but it's got a lot more sort of like build variation to it.
Yeah.
Which probably also means it's really unbalanced. Like
That's a
in
tough
one
thing.
point it's work in progress, and I am not balancing it. Like I'm
Right,
not
yeah.
doing huge amounts of testing to balance it properly. My sort of general excuse is as long as nothing feels so broken you feel like you have to take it, and as long as and if everybody's on the same side, it's not the biggest issue. I don't want anything to be glaringly broken, but I'm not that fussed about things being perfectly balanced. I don't think it's
Right.
hugely
Yeah.
important.
It kind of depends on your system and who's gonna play it, and because if you're, I think that's a really, it depends on who your target audience is, right? Because if your target audience is casual Zelda fans like me, that's just like, I'm gonna be a Goron with a big fucking hammer, then it sounds like that would be just fine. But
Yeah.
if you're looking to prescribe this more to power gamers and all that kind of thing, then the power balance is really a very tricky issue.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people get caught up on it.
Yeah.
I think part of it is because specifically, it's D&D it's very common in D&D discourse in particular, like Pathfinder kinds of games. And I think a lot of it's down to the presentation of the games with the sort of based combat and the sort of pseudo strategy. Like they're very similar to strategy games in a lot of the presentation.
Yeah.
And things like that. And I think that's part of the reason why people get quite caught up in it. You've also got the idea that I think there's a pervasive concept in a lot of the D&D culture of the idea of the DM being an adversary to the players. I think a huge amount of DMs genuinely believe that they're supposed to be trying to kill the players. You see a lot of jokes about it. You see a lot of it's a pervasive concept, and I think it can be difficult to get around that in a combat tunnel game, especially because if you peel it all the way back, the job of a DM in a combat tunnel game is to stick enemies in the way of the characters.
Yeah.
Like, obviously they do a lot more than that.
Right.
And a DM will do way more than that. But from a sort of like hard mechanical basis in a combat tunnel based game, pretty much your primary job is to pick enemies and shove them in front of players.
Right.
Like, make obstacles for them. And I think that can sort of like create this kind of like adversarial relationship sometimes, which you then get into this thing of, well, if you're in an adversarial relationship, things are a competition suddenly, and if it's a competition, you want to make sure that you're being treated fairly, and you're getting a fair shake, and so therefore balance is really important all of a sudden. And and especially when you've got such a finely tuned maths behind the game as like in stuff like D&D, it can be quite glaringly obvious, or at least it can feel like it's obvious, because balance is always this really weirdly elusive way.
And balance is a thing that it's actually quite difficult to like figure out mechanically without like literally playing games, because like things that you won't think of will just be like big issues sometimes. I designed a Pokemon tabletop one time, and I was trying to design it so that you could literally just like look up Pokemon on the web, on Bulbapedia or your smartphone Pokedex app, or even in your game, right? And look in like, oh, this Pokemon has 100 in this stat and 90 in this stat and all that, and I tried to balance it off of that. And mechanically, it seemed like mathematically that made sense, except for in Pokemon, there are some Pokemon that have just egregious stat differences. And so I made a gym leader that my first play group had. It was like the second session or first session or something, and they're coming up against this gym leader, and he's got a Steelix. And Steelix in the games has a defense stat of like 250 or something. And based on the way that I had written my system, literally none of the other Pokemon's attacks could damage it. And I was like, that's a problem. And as a DM, I looked at this, and the first couple attacks, I'm just like, oh, that does no damage, because I'm just, calculating it, not really thinking. I'm just like, oh yeah, my system makes sense. I checked out the math. It's all fair and balanced, right? Except for then, this kind of came up, and it's like, as the DM, I didn't tell them at the time. I think I told him later, but I was like, I just kind of fudged it and changed his defense stat to make it so that he could be damaged, because otherwise he was just going to face roll all of them. Because it was a weird situation, because things like that come up where it's like you wouldn't have thought about it, but you get this kind of weird broken shit in your games sometimes.
Absolutely.
No matter how much you check the math, sometimes something weird will happen.
And it's even harder in TTRPGs as well, because you'll find stuff that's really broken because of the social aspect of the game. Like the storytelling aspect or the social aspect of the game will make something that mathematically checks out really egregious because of like some sort of like loophole that it opens up, or a way it synergizes with like a social skill or something, or like that happens a lot, and it's really, you can't really account for that for like the way people are going to play breaking things without testing it. And even then, like, no amount of testing is going to catch every one of those
Yeah,
cases.
because it's, that's why we have things like, erratas and version 3.5 and things like that, Things come up even in professionally tested scenarios like Dungeons and Dragons,
That's why you have
shit
homebrews
happens.
as well.
Yeah.
You find stuff that doesn't quite work for your group because of the way you play, or the kind of story you're planning on telling, or just a particular character doesn't work with other characters in the group, or is too overpowered when combined with one of the others, or something.
Yeah, it's one of those things, especially with you have a largely customizable system with a lot of abilities that you can combine, which I have always thought is one of the hilarious things about like playing Magic, with as many different cards as they print. Some combination somewhere along the line will just be absolute bullshit. and so for that reason they have card bans, and tabletops are no different. Yeah, so real quick, I'm going to introduce the beer of the week, which I actually forgot to update on the stream, so it says the wrong beer. But it is also from the same brewery. So this is, last week I had a Tommyknocker Drift Blonde. This is Tommyknocker Brewery's Chocolate Porter. So these are some local guys up the hill from me, up in the mountain town.
Nice.
Tommyknocker Brewery makes a lot of good beers. I had one of these chocolate porters earlier this week, and then I immediately forgot what it was about. Other than chocolate and porter. I mean, actually, that tastes like a chocolate porter. It's like a fucking melted chocolate bar. That's pretty good.
Wow.
Why is it spilling? It's like coming out of the side of the can when I pour. How did that happen? Also, I like to show off my glassware, like I said, and this is a really strange glass with a story. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a glass or a flower pot, but as my day job, I drive a school bus, and one of the parents of my students gave me this, and it was full of candy and a Starbucks gift card. And I was like, it came with a Starbucks gift card? Is it a coffee cup? I'm not sure. It's got a Starbucks gift card. Like, a lot of times when people give you a Starbucks gift card, just I feel like the thing is that you get a coffee mug with it, or a to-go cup, or something like that. So I was like, but it looks like it's just a flower pot. And she was a nice Hispanic woman. And I'm like, is this a cultural thing that I don't understand because I'm just some stupid white guy? And then I felt bad, but whatever it is, I am going to drink beer out of it.
Own it.
Yep.
It's pretty good. I've got a fun mug with a silly story to it.
Awesome.
So I have this I Heart Puerto Rico mug.
Nice.
I've never been to Puerto Rico. The reason why I have that is I had a friend back in uni who he went to, his significant other, now wife, lived in America, and he went away for like, I think it was a couple of months. It was a significant portion of time over summer. He went to go visit her. And when he came back, he bought us all presents. And he bought me that mug.
Nice.
And he told me the story of how he got that mug, which was, in the last couple of days of him being in America, he was sort of panic buying presents for all of us because he realised he's not. And he was running around New York trying to find something for all of us. And he thought, oh, Jack will be easy. I'll just get him a mug because obviously, tea.
Right.
So he went into one of those kitschy I Heart New York stores to get a mug. And he was just like, they're all just so bland and crap. They're all just I Heart New York on a white mug. And then he saw it in the middle of one of the shelves was just this single I Heart Puerto Rico mug. And he was like, that's the one. That's the one I'm getting.
That is amazing. I feel like I should go make some tea right now, but then I won't get anybody at Mario Kart.
yeah, I'm pleased with that story. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a lot of weird mugs with weird stories that we get into, so it's very well appreciated when somebody else has an interesting story to go with their glassware.
Oh, you're not doing too bad. Oh, so
Yeah,
you're in
I got second in here, and then I went into the other Rainbow Road for a little bit. It's tricky because I can't just like pump the crap out of this super mushroom. Oh yes,
no.
Bullet Bill. Bullet Bill will do the turns for me. It is the last lap. It didn't matter.
I find that the bullet bills are really good until they like dissipate just as you're approaching a corner.
Right, and then you're just like going too fast. Can't. I needed to drift like 30 feet back. You know, I get that. Yeah. Anyway, so back to tabletop RPG design. Is there anything specific that you would suggest to avoid for anybody looking into designing their own tabletop or even just homebrew content?
There's nothing that I'd really say avoid. My main thing would be like my main piece of advice is I think set your goals. Like figure out what you want to make. I think too many people kind of like they start out and they don't really identify what it is they actually want to make. And the reason why that's important is not so that you can like lock yourself in, because you don't want to lock yourself in. You want to be able to explore stuff, but it's so that you can check what you've got and like get rid of stuff easily. So like as an example, Locust, we spent like 5 years making Locust. Me and Steph, who's the other half of Compart Games, we made it while we were both working full time, and we just kind of like made it on the side. It took us like 5 years, but about 3 years in, there was a point where we did a play test, and a load of like the new additions to rules and some of the tweaks we made just weren't really working out, and there was like a card mechanic that we were playing with that we just every variation of it just hadn't worked right. And so we just sort of went, right, okay, we've tried workshopping this thing about 4 times now and it's not going right. Let's go back to the drawing board. And we peeled right back and said, what are our goals with this system? What do we want it to do? And we sort of like picked out the main things that we wanted it to do, like the fact that we wanted it to be scary, we wanted it to have like custom monsters, we wanted it to evoke sort of personal horror, and not like it doesn't play with eldritch horror, which is like the common tabletop RPG one. It was much more personal and psychological.
Right.
So we kind of like had our setup, and we were like, yeah, this thing that we've been workshopping, it doesn't do any of that. It's not adding anything for those goals to the game. And because we had those goals set out, we could kind of just go, okay, yeah, fine. As much as we like the idea of this, it doesn't need to be here. It's not doing what we need it to do. It's not helping the game, and it helps you make the really hard decisions if you know what you're trying to make. And that can be all sorts of different things, because the goals are not set in stone. It doesn't have to be a specific type of game. It can be an emotion you're looking for the game to evoke. It can be a mechanic that you want it to revolve around. Like, you really like this mechanic, I want to make a tabletop based on this mechanic. So then that mechanic is the bit that's set in stone, and stuff like your setting and like your pacing and what kind of characters you make and that sort of stuff, that's all mutable, because your goal is to use that mechanic. But it might be, I want to make a game in this setting, a la Heroes of Hyrule, or the various stuff that you've done, where it's like, I want to make a game that allows me to play in this setting. I want to make a Pokemon game. I want to make a Zelda game. And you can go deeper into it and sort of identify what it is about those games that you want to capture. But at the very least, if you have that kind of goal, you can go, okay, stuff's not working. Let's have a look at what I've made and what I've done, and let's ask the question, is this contributing to that goal? and it helps you sort of streamline what you're making. It helps you throw away stuff that's otherwise really difficult to throw out. But you always have to be able to throw stuff out as a game designer.
Yeah.
Because you always have more ideas than fit. And it is just a thing you have to get used to. Wow, that was
awkward with the thwomp there. Just like, all I can see is bright, searing light. Yeah.
That's my number one piece of game making advice is just identify your goals. And you're free to change them. Like, that's the thing, is that if you decide that you started making one thing with goal Y, but actually in the process you've realised all you really want to make is something with goal Z, change it. Cool. Sweet. There's nothing saying you can't, but just know what they are at any point in your dev. And also, if you're working with anyone else, it means that you can kind of like align what you're doing as well, which is really useful. And it gives you kind of like a neutral metric to test things against, so that when you're sort of like when you're inevitably discussing something that you disagree on, like a mechanic that one of you's come up with that the other one doesn't think works in the game, or something like that, it gives you something neutral that you can kind of discuss it around rather than it becoming a clash of egos as well.
Yeah.
Which is always really useful when you're making stuff with other people. Because it doesn't matter how good friends you are, sometimes you're going to butt heads on things. And when people are talking to each other about their own creative ideas and what they've come up with, it can be pretty hard to stay level-headed. But if you can go, okay, but I don't think this is contributing to the goals, here's why, and they can say either, actually, yeah, fair enough, or they can go, actually, I think this is contributing to the goals, here's why, and you can have a neutral conversation without anybody getting hurt about it.
Yeah.
And it stops it from being, I don't want that in the game, I think it's bad as well.
Right.
Like, I don't think that's a good mechanic. It's not an argument you should be having with your teammates. You should be discussing, I don't think this fits in this project. Generally speaking. There are situations where you can say, that is a bad mechanic and we should not have it.
Right.
There are things as bad mechanics.
Yeah.
They're rare comparatively to neutral mechanics or good mechanics, but they exist.
Certainly, yeah. That's a good take. Yeah, I can't help but agree with pretty much everything you just said. Won't really find much argument from me. I'm not sure that makes for such a riveting conversation, but that's what it is.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just how I've developed my process.
Yeah.
Is I start with goals now. And they vary a lot. Like with Locus, it was horror game, not Call of Cthulhu.
Right.
Was where we started.
That's a fair place to start.
and then it sort of became horror game. The place is the evil thing. It's based on sort of like personal and psychological horror. Monsters have to be monsters, like custom monsters to reflect the player characters. Like those were like the main things that became pillars of the system. And then Coffee and Chaos, which we're doing, basically started as, I want to make a game about running a cafe that I can print on a menu and that uses cutlery instead of dice. And those were my starting points. So it's got to be really small and it uses cutlery instead of dice somehow. And we eventually figured out how to do that, which was nice. But
that's just impressive.
A very different kind of like starting point, a very different kind of like angle to kind of take the game design from, because it was very much a mechanical angle rather than a thematic angle. So, and then with Heroes of Hyrule, it was just, I want to make a game that's Legend of Zelda. I want to do a Legend of Zelda game. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, what's the main pillars of Legend of Zelda? Well, adventure. They tend to be combat based and puzzle based, and there's lots of different things you can do. So there's like stuff that I want to be able to facilitate in game, like cooking, because that was a really cool part of Breath of the Wild, and even outside of Breath of the Wild, food has always been like a major thing in Zelda.
Yeah.
Like nearly every game has some sort of stuff about food in it.
I dig it.
Be it like things that Gorons eat and mentions of that, or it'd be like a sub quest where you've got to sort out food for someone or something. Like the culinary sort of like traits of Hyrule have always kind of been a thing. So I wanted to have cooking and food in there. Riding animals, like having mounts, was a thing, because obviously horse riding's been a major thing since Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
The other ones, music. It doesn't currently have a music system because I made one and it was garbage, so it got removed.
Right.
It will be.
I feel like that would be a kind of a tough thing to implement into a tabletop RPG.
Well, I mean,
no, I guess there's
cards.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways you could do it, but I mean, other than just like, oh, you use your magic flute to cast your magic, other than that, a bard isn't really all that far removed from a sorcerer. To put it in like Dungeons and Dragons terms, for example,
Which is what I wanted to avoid, but
yeah.
I haven't figured out how to do it yet. But I will. I'll figure something out. Like I have this whole idea of having instruments and like melodies, and depending on your tribe or the tribes that you kind of like associate with, to start with, depend on what you can kind of like start out with. But the idea would be that you kind of like can do stuff like, if you're a Goron, they teach drums a lot more often than other things, so it's easier. So you like can start with drums, but you can potentially use drums to play Korok songs, and that you'll get like a different type of effect if you use Goron's drums to play a Korok song and stuff like that. That was kind of what I wanted to go for, but the framework that I originally made up for it just didn't quite work.
Right, and then of course you got to have bagpipes, right?
Don't have bagpipes at the moment.
There's no bagpipes. Come on, man. Well, just for that, I'll play a bagpipe tune, because I forgot to play any bagpipes earlier. I was supposed to do a couple of tunes, so I'll do one now instead. So for you, this will come through weird because Discord picks it up funny, but it should sound okay on the stream.
Wait, no, I do have bagpipes. They're Hylian.
Oh, sweet.
Hylians have bagpipes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Not like the... Or you could give, of course, the Deku pipes are like kind of a bagpipe, right?
Don't have Dekus yet.
Okay. Gotta have Dekus, right?
Yeah. Tribe.
But yeah, anyways, so we'll do one bagpipe tune to lead us out, because I think we're winding down on the conversation here. It's been actually a really fun time. So we'll have one bagpipe tune, and then we'll have our final segment of the podcast, which is always a ton of fun. So what's your favorite bagpipe tune? Put you on the spot there. You didn't expect that, did you?
I mean, I'm half Scottish and I don't have a favourite bagpipe tune. I just really like the sound of bagpipes. Like, I haven't been taught any like bagpipe stuff, so I don't know any songs specifically, but I do think that they sound great.
Yeah.
Serenade me.
All right, I shall serenade you, good sir. Look out! I don't know any songs about tea, so I played that one, which I wrote for a mead hall that originally started actually as a little tea shop. They started as like a tea place that you could come, and they had like a bunch of board games and stuff, so you could play tabletop games while you drink your tea, and they had like e-hookah. And later on, they expanded into a larger space, and they had a giant, like, community table in the middle. And they were actually the best mead bar in town because they had like a crap load of different meads on tap. And it's around my area, it's very rare to find like one mead on tap, and these guys had like a bunch.
Where we are, mead is like seasonal.
Mm-hmm.
You can only find it in supermarket. Like you can only find it in shops at certain points of the year. Usually, like it's just not a thing you can just get.
Yeah, you can get it if you go to like specialty liquor stores. Have it around here because there is a Colorado mead maker called Redstone Meadery up in Boulder, Colorado, and they distribute around the state pretty well. So most big liquor shops will have their stuff, but other than that, it's uncommon to find any. Like most places, and it's very, very few bars I've seen with the Redstone on tap. But this place had Redstone and Viking Blood, which is a good. It's a very interesting mead with it's made with some kind of flour. I'm trying to think of what it was called, but it's a very it's like. It's hard even for mead too. It ranks in something at like 19% or something alcohol by volume, so it gets you there pretty quick. And they had all sorts of different stuff. Yeah, yeah, it was really good. But sometimes you were in for a hangover. But yeah, that was one of my favorite places, and unfortunately one of the many small businesses that got murdered by a pandemic. So.
That's a real shame.
Yep. But such as life, I suppose. So thank you again, Jack, or at TCrusading, if you want to check this guy out on the Twitter. You can find him there. Or at Cobblepath for Cobblepath Games. They do other stuff, as we have talked about, if you've been paying attention. If you have not been paying attention, then you have to drink. I haven't been paying attention. That's why I'm drinking out of a fucking flower pot.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
This has been a fun time. So, if you ever happen to find yourself this way again, at this ungodly hour in the night, then we'd love to have you on. I was a little sad that my co-host wasn't here because he's a lot more big into designing stuff than I am. We've both designed a fair amount of stuff, but he really gets into the meat of it and has published several different things on DriveThruRPG and stuff. So
cool.
Yeah, so we'll shout out to him if you want to look up 5 Cataclysms. Core Rules Beta Edition. That is from our good co-host. That's available on DriveThruRPG. You can pick that up for any price you want, including $0.00. So he always recommends that you pick it up for free, and then if you like it and want to support more content, then you can donate through DriveThruRPG that way. It's a kind of an interesting old school D&D-esque system, and he's got several modules up there too.
Is it also on itch?
I don't know. He always plugs it on RPG.
There's a thing called 5 Cataclysms on itch apparently, but I don't know if it's the same one.
Okay. It seems unlikely that somebody else would have the same name, but it's.
I think it is the same one. Cool.
Okay, then it's possible. Yeah, I'll have to confirm that with Chris. Tweet at ShatterSpike1 and tell him, hey, is this the right thing?
If you want to support the developer, buy it on itch.
Yeah.
Because we get a way bigger cut. DriveThruRPG takes an absolute obscene cut.
Good to know.
But get it wherever you like buying games.
Yeah.
Buying a game is still brilliant.
Yeah.
And then rate it well.
Yeah. And if you're interested in Jack's content, you can check him out on Twitter for he's got links there to his Zelda RPG if you want to look into that. And at Cobblepath, like I said, has links to their stuff. You can check it out. It's all cool stuff, I'm sure. I actually am more interested in your horror game now. I'm gonna have to look that up after we're done here. So now we come to the final segment of the podcast where we just ramble on about inane bullshit until somebody says something really awkward, and then I cut off the podcast at the most awkward sentence possible. So
oh no.
Yeah, it's more fun that way. And I mean, we've already told you that a game is releasing on literally the date 69. So I mean, it's going to be hard to one up ourselves here, but I think we can do it. I believe in us. We are professionals. Professionals who drink out of flower pots. The smell of this clay really, like, it smells like coppery almost, and that, like, it detracts a lot from the beer. I feel like this beer would be much better in a non-copper smelling clay pot.
Does it flavor the beer at all, though?
Not that I can tell, but it does certainly distract from the flavor of the beer because you're getting that nose of copper instead of that nose of chocolate porter, which are slightly different flavors.
I'm honestly quite impressed that the copper's outweighing the chocolate porter smell.
Yeah,
like, I'd have thought that would be pretty hefty.
Yeah, like I like actually just shoving my nose in here, and I can like very barely smell the beer over the copper. So this is a 0 on our scale of 3 to 17. If you pay attention to our rating system, this is not a good drinking vessel, but the beer is pretty good, despite that. I'll just plug my nose while I drink.
I might have to steal your rating system. I'm quite fond of the idea of just moving the goalpost rather than the score. Everything's always 10, but it's 10 out of something else. It's different every time.
Right, yeah.
How good it is.
Our scoring system, we actually based on Dungeons & Dragons ability scores, where you roll your 3d6 and you get a number randomly between 3 and 18. But we decided most of the time if you get an 18, you're probably cheating. So we reduced that. So it's a scale of 3 to 17. So 3 is like the worst epic terrible beers, and we have given scores lower than that because they have racial penalties to being a beer. Not often. I think we've had very few that were that bad. And every now and then we do cheat and give something an 18. We're like, yeah, this is a good enough beer that we'll cheat for it. So,
oh, fair play. That's quite cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Oh.
The only problem is that I have to explain that like 80% of the time. If I have a guest and I'm like, this is a 6 on a scale of 3 to 17, they're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Question is how many of the beers have you tasted that have dark vision? Because everything in 5th Ed has dark vision except for humans and cats, apparently.
Cats?
Which I'm genuinely angry about. I learned this the other day. Cats in D&D 5th Ed don't have dark vision.
That is strange.
Don't
literal cats have like good dark vision? Isn't that a thing?
Yes. Yeah, and everything has dark vision in 5th Ed except humans. So it's like, but you didn't give it to cats who have dark vision, clearly.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's not okay. Like, who designed that game?
I don't know. Sometimes I drink enough until I think I have dark vision.
But that was just the lights going out, isn't it?
Could be. Just they're turning the street lights off and now I have to stumble home in the dark. Uh-oh!
Oh, man. On that note, the sun has come up here.
Wow.
Which is horrifying.
That's just impressive. And I'm a little sorry. We had another guy on from over there one time, and I think he like got up extra early instead of staying up extra late for it. So I'm like, I'm not really sure which one would be better.
I am not a morning person.
Me neither. So I feel like that's what I would have did, especially if I was gonna drink. Like, although he didn't drink either because he's like a non-drinking kind of a guy. He's an all right dude, but I'm always perfectly happy when I meet somebody else who doesn't drink because that means there's more beer for me.
Yeah, I probably should have checked the time difference at some point before, like.
Yeah, it was funny because somebody else like chimed in like on our little back and forth tweet conversation, and they were like, "Hey, are you interested in having another guest about this topic?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And they're like, "Okay, what time do you record?" And I'm like, 9:30 p.m. U.S. Mountain Time. He's like, "Oh, that won't work for me. I'm in Britain." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And you didn't say anything, so I had no idea you were in Britain until like last week. I think you were like, "Hey, what time zone is Mountain Time?" I'm like, "U.S. Mountain Time." You're like, "Ah, shit." What did I get myself into?
You said Mountain Time, and I didn't know US Mountain Time was a thing.
Yeah.
So I assumed it was just like a colloquialism, like between sort of states in the US, you'd just be like, "Oh, I'm Mountain Time," and like people know where that meant. And I was like, I don't know what that means. So like, which time zone? And you're like, US Mountain Time, and I was like, I did not know US Mountain Time was an official time zone.
It doesn't come up much if you don't live in the U.S. Mountain Time Zone. Because, like, it's funny, like, I haven't, like, watched regular TV in a long time, but for, like, the longest time, like, all TV in America would say, this is the time in Pacific, in Central, and in Eastern times, and they would not say Mountain, because, like, the only big population center is here in Denver. In pretty much the whole Mountain Time Zone. Like, there's a couple of, like, I think Phoenix might be Mountain Time Zone, but I'm not sure. It might be far enough one way or the other. So it's like there's like one or two big pockets of population in the whole time zone. So like not even people in America even always realize that Mountain Time exists.
Oh, that's funny.
It is kind of weird, though, because a couple of weeks ago we had our Canadian buddy on here, and he was also in Mountain Time Zone, and I think that's the first time that's happened, because usually I get guests on, and they're in California or New York or something, and we have to figure out the time difference, and it was like, sweet, finally somebody else is here, but he's in Canada, so he's not really here. But, yeah.
It's really interesting, though. Like, yeah, just... so weird. And yeah, 4:30 a.m. I think this is the latest stream I've done so far. I've done a few late night ones, but not this late.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us again. We will
to be honoured.
We will gladly drink to you. If you're in our live audience, then drink to Jack. Or if you're catching this up on the something else audio version later, drink anyway. It's your God-given right, or something. I don't know anything about that. I know that beer is delicious. That's what I know. We're really bad at saying awkward things tonight.
Yeah, like, I'm not...
usually something awkward is said, like, shortly after I say, this is the awkward thing cutoff time. And then somebody just says something weird. And
I'm British. We're bad at this.
Right, yeah, you're too polite.
Yeah, we're like too kind of like stuck up.
Right? Sort of you're more polite than the Canadian guy I had on. Although, to be fair, he also drank like 5 beers during the stream, so, Which it's... one of these weeks, I'm going to have to one-up him, because I've had 5 drinks on the podcast before, but I've never had 5 beers on the podcast before. So in one of the upcoming weeks, I have to be like, show him who's boss. Like, this is my podcast. You can't drink more on my podcast than me. I'm going to drink a whole fucking 6-pack, and it's going to be great.
Do it. I hope it's great. Not just
It will either be great or horrifying and terrible. But, one way or the other. It can't be worse than the time I was streaming Undertale and I rubbed hot sauce in my eye.
That doesn't sound great or like a good idea.
It wasn't.
Why?
Well, I always have a cocktail. Like I said, Sean drinks something stupid, and there was some kind of Fire Emblem news or something. So I decided to make a Fire Emblem inspired cocktail. And so I was like, okay, it has to have some kind of fiery kick to it. So I put in some hot sauce among whatever the other ingredients are, and I think I like mixed it around with a cinnamon stick, and then I took the shot, and then it was like, oh man, it's really like it was really spicy because the hot sauce like got all congealed at the top of the bottle somehow. So I actually scraped it out of the bottle with the cinnamon stick and swirled it around in my whiskey. Or whatever. I think it was, yeah, I think it was literally whiskey and hot sauce and a cinnamon stick. So I took this shot and I was like, oh man, that's really, really hot. And, you know, it's all making my eyes water and everything. And I'm like trying to rub my watery eyes and all that. And then I realized that, you know, I had touched the hot sauce in order to create this cocktail. And I realized what I had done. And I was just like, oh God, oh God. Hold on, guys, and I threw off my headset. I just had to go to the sink and fucking rinse my eyes out for like 10 minutes. I felt so stupid to have 10 minutes of just. I'm sure like the bare like of the sink was probably on the stream, and that's all they got for 10 minutes. And then I came back with a towel on my face. I'm just like, that was the fucking stupidest thing I've ever done on stream. It was great. And terrible. Mostly terrible, but also great.
Do it for the views. Do it for the views.
You know, if I get more views, I will rub hot sauce in my eyes again.
Don't say that.
A lot more views.
People will take it up. That's not a risk to take.
Is there a risk not to take?
I think there's plenty of
I guess there are probably plenty of risks not to take,
like setting up a sort of online tracker for how many times your players beat up a lesbian during Pride Month.